Commission for Gender Equality met earlier today with the South African Council of Educators, the Teddy Bear Clinic and the Department of Basic Education to discuss sexual violence in our schools. The Commission has observed an extremely high rate of sexual violence in schools across various provinces. The high pregnancy rate is the #1 cause of girls dropping out of school. Well, to talk more about this is Deputy Chairperson at the Commission for Gender Equality, that's Thabiseng Moleka. And Commissioner, good evening and thanks for your time. So it's about time we had a discussion about this. So firstly, very quickly, just tell us some of your more worrying findings before we head into the meeting today.
I think the biggest concern and repeated finding is the length of time that it takes to finalize disciplinary cases. I think we, as the Commission, within our mandate, have a mandate to investigate specifically where we have complaints from the public, from learners, and from members of the public. And we have found that the length of time to finalize cases is lengthy, more than the applicable 90 days as per indicated in the Education Act. And we have found that the department is dragging its feet in this regard. I think another finding is on the level of teen pregnancies that is prevalent in South Africa. Over the last decade, more than 50,000 learners per annum are actually pregnant in our schools, and you're finding that by the time they're 18, a fifth of our 18-year-olds are pregnant. By the time they're 20, 40% of our young women are pregnant. This is not norm, and you're finding that the majority of these pregnancies happen when they are actually in school, either by learners or sometimes teachers, which is a serious concern.
And I think sexual predators, from what I've read, is a major concern for you. So in this meeting today that you had with the various role players, that's the Teddy Bear Clinic and the South African Council of Educators, what did you decide? What was decided? Basically?
So just to take you through the process, what we do when we have hearings, we call forth we call the Department of Basic Education, the Director General. We had his HODs for the relevant provinces that we were doing investigations for. So you look at it from a macro perspective, that is the national office, which has the policy and norms and standards. That is their mandate to look at that. And then you also then look at the micro level, which is at the departmental level. The departments at a provincial level employ the teachers. They then have to sanction the teachers. They then have to hold them account. The South African Council of Educators, parallel, has a mandate as a statutory body, but they can also discipline, and they strike teachers off the roll who are actually found to be sexual predators or have cases of sexual harassment or misconduct in this case. So they strike them off the roll, and you should not be able to be in any South African school, but you do find instances where they do creep in, and that's what we were dealing with today.
Okay, so what was the sort of resolution? How do we keep these predators out of our classrooms and away from our children?
One, vetting. Vetting, we've said to the South African Council of Educators, no longer should teachers who are sexual predators or are found to have sexual misconduct in their history be in our schools. Correct vetting must happen. They need access to the sexual list. There's an offenders registry with the social development department that is given over. However, because of the Act, they are not able to access this very critical information, and yet they are the ones who create a list or roll of offenders who are not deemed fit to actually be in our schools. So we said change the Act. Put time frames to making sure that this is advanced. They have meetings with head of departments at what they call headcoms. That happens on a bi-monthly basis. And we have said that an MOU being signed must be implemented. But I think that the greater gain for society in general is that the Act must be changed. The urgency of the matters of changing bills and acts, our time frames are too lengthy, and we take way too long to deal with this. So we are saying, one, expedite that. Number two, the department has to have the mandatory 90-day process that it takes to discipline and to allow for investigative processes and to finalize matters. That must be done. We have sanctioned, and we're going to take a very, very tough stance on the departments where we have found that this has not been the case. And we expect the DG, who is the monetary and the leader over these departments at a provincial level, to take the necessary sanction, because as a Chapter 9, we can then make remedial action in this regard. And we will. And we have stated that today. We are continuing with some of the provincial matters tomorrow, and we will finalize the cases that are very specific at a micro level. We are not satisfied with the length of time it takes.
And what about educating our children about not becoming a victim of sexual violence in our schools? Because yes, teachers, their peers, their friends, their boyfriends, girlfriends, or sometimes it's happening at home. So, and I don't know how far your work extends, or is it just based in the classroom, but we have to start teaching them to say no or to fight for their rights and to protect themselves. And it doesn't strike me as if we're actually doing a very good job at that in our schools.
I think even more important is the prevention.
Yes.
So let's talk to the prevention as well as the responding and the corrective action. I think that our young men in schools, our teachers, we should not have to have a situation where we're dealing with the number of sexual assaults in schools in the first instance. And I think that where we have to now, it's in the broader scheme of things in society, that the school is a place where it's telling you of the systemic problems in society. Because these children come from homes where this is prevalent.
Yes.
They come from places where they're not necessarily safe, and also in schools where they are thinking that it's okay to get away with this. Sometimes it's in classrooms, sometimes it's after class activities, sometimes teachers even take them to their own places, to their own homes to conduct such sexual harassment because they are sexual predators. So we do definitely advocate for the teaching of this, and I think that the public education programs, the instances where civil society partakes, making sure that learners know. But I think let's go back to the family.
Yeah.
I think families need to look at how are children told about what is right and wrong, how are they being raised, how are our boy children being raised. You cannot go to a school and molest a child and that is okay. You go home and you continue as normal.
Yeah.
There's probably something wrong in the psyche of that child. Parents need to monitor the behavior of their children and make sure that their children's conduct is above board. Where it's not, take matters into your own hands. Go for psychological help, treatment and the like, particularly at young boy children. And then on the side of the girls, for us to prevent this is very critical as well, so that we arm them to understand when is it sexual misconduct, when is the line being drawn, and when is it unacceptable. And I think civil society, together with agencies like CGE, definitely comes to the fore to
and no
try
one
and
should be
prevent
promising
this.
you better marks for you to engage in such, because that's what happens. That's
Absolutely.
what teachers are using a lot of the time. Thanks very much, Commissioner. That's enlightening. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for, but we all